All right, welcome everybody to another episode of the Legends Series. Today with us, Glenn Crooks. Big history of coaching soccer in our state and in neighboring states. I'll start off by saying founder of the women's soccer programs at Long Island University, St. Peter's University in Jersey City, MAC Coach of the Year in 1994, spent 14 years at Rutgers University as head coach. In his time there, 13 straight Big East championships. And amazingly, Glenn has worked for just under 30 years with the New Jersey ODP program and his New Jersey Youth Soccer Hall of Famer. Currently changed his role a little bit, a play-by-play announcer for NYC FC and host of the amazing Coaching Academy show on Sirius XM FC. Glenn, such a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
Thank you, James. It's nice to chat like this. We've known each other for a long time, but our first interview. Well, not true. That's not true. I've interviewed you. This is your first interview of me. That's it.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? How it's flipped around. So I love it. I love it. So I've got a series of questions here. I think right off the bat, I can say that, I think you're a valuable resource for everybody here in New Jersey, because I'm guessing with all the things that you've done over the years, including now with being the host of the Coaching Academy, I'm just imagining that the amount of knowledge that you've acquired just from speaking to all your guests has to be through the roof. But before we get into all that, why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and a little bit about your upbringing?
Sure. I grew up in Basking Ridge, New Jersey, which in my early years there was no club soccer program. So I was I loved sports, and my dad was a Yankees fan and a baseball fan. So I really became a baseball fan. I know, I hear the stories of the players where soccer starts at home and they're banging the ball against the garage door or the curb or whatever it might be. I was throwing a baseball against the garage door or whatever. And that was my passion, but sports was my passion. And then eventually I got introduced to the game. This German fellow moved into town, and he ended up coaching in the Somerset Hill Soccer Club. And he's a guy with a lot of knowledge. And then one of my best friend's father, who is a New Jersey Hall of Famer, the late Bob Reichenbach. He's a former president of the New Jersey Youth Soccer Association and formed the Somerset Hill Soccer Club. His passion for the game certainly, led me to kind of look at it a little bit more closely. But it was still baseball for me, I have to say. And I didn't really start digging deep into the sport. I kept playing it. I went to the University of Georgia for journalism and communications. To this day, they do not have a men's soccer program. They do have a women's program. And I played intramurals, and I was like Pele down there, because there was not much soccer going on in that part of Georgia at the time. And I came home, James, and I started playing indoor, which I really just enjoyed. It was a great workout. And the local councilman, whose son I coached, I started coaching boys. I had no idea what I was doing. I was just asked to coach this team. And one of the fathers was on the town council and said, "Hey, we're starting a girls soccer program at Ridge High." This is another program I started in Basking Ridge in 1983. And then that's really where I got my coaching start. And I suppose in many ways, my passion started for the game. So the playing career, not illustrious, that's the furthest from that word you can imagine, but it's been mostly as a coach.
Wow, that's crazy. And so you didn't play high school soccer or anything like that? Did you play on a club team?
I played high school soccer. I played briefly on a club team. And the club team, my favorite club team was called the Chukters. Tony Bednarski. It was like this group of Ukrainian guys, and we went up to the Lake Placid. They used to have this thing called Dawn to Dusk. It's so much fun. And so what I would do is I would coach a women's team, and then I would play on this over 30 men's team, which now would have to be over a lot more than that. And we won the title up there. So that's my favorite club experience. But no, my playing was very limited. And there was a time where I couldn't find anybody. I might have been the only Division I coach for the time I was at Rutgers that never played in college. I didn't play in college. I played in high school for a guy named Rick Hildebrand. He was, and I still stay in touch with him. We're still dear friends. And so my experience in high school was good, but I was a reserve. Let's just put it this way, James. I was a winger, and I had 2 career goals. That tells you.
Well, it's still an amazing story, man. That you don't come from a typical soccer background where you kind of lived and breathed it, but you must have fallen in love with it at some point. That's my next question. But just seeing where you are now, it makes it, I think, an even more amazing story. But was there a moment when you said to yourself, man, I love this sport? Was there a moment, or was it kind of like just crept up on you and all of a sudden you were involved in the game?
Well, initially, I'm just so competitive. So initially, we had our first teams at Ridge High every year. In fact, very good teams, sectional state championships, county championships. So I just liked winning. I was like, I really enjoyed winning. So everything was about, how you set things up and in order to win. So so that was a big part of it. So I think I honestly, James, I think I could have dived in and coached any sport because I just like the competition. But then the nature of the game, as I think the most rewarding thing I did, or the thing that really helped me, was just watching others operate. Because I got my C license, I got my early licenses like the F and the E and the D and the state. Gene Chisowich was one of my instructors. Tommy Durkin was one of my instructors. And then I took my C at Monmouth University, and I didn't get another license until 2008. I was just, I just never went back and got the license. But that didn't eliminate, but where I got my knowledge was observing other people, going to their sessions, going to regional camp and just watching the regional coaches and what they did. And what I learned is that, there's generally no magic pills. Everybody is generally doing a lot of similar things, but it's the way they instruct, the words they use, so I looked very closely and listened very closely to those sorts of things. A guy like Bobby Clark from Notre Dame did a session down in Atlantic City at the Tropicana with chandeliers and the carpet, but it was one of the best sessions I ever saw. And I'll never forget when he described how to release yourself from a defender, what kinds of movements. He called it drift and explode. And I think that was in the early 2000s, and I've used that terminology ever since. Love it. I think it's such a great way to describe how players need to separate themselves from defenders. So it's that, just watching a lot of people do their thing. Coaching, a lot of it is just stealing other ideas and then kind of molding it around your own style.
Yeah, that's it. So did you take anything from baseball into your actual soccer coaching philosophy? I noticed you said you used the words before that, setting yourself up to win. I feel like that happens a lot in baseball, where at the end they bring in a closer, right? I'm not a big baseball guru, but in general, it sounds like that might have transferred from your baseball time. Is that accurate?
I think the biggest the transfer of anything with the baseball to the soccer is I've always been very in tune with the tactics of the game, how things happen and why they happen. And I think that's helped me in coaching, because I'm not the only one where this happens, but my family normally has been somewhat amazed. We could be watching an NFL game, a soccer match, baseball, and I'll sit there and kind of predict what's happening or make the call before the announcers do. And it's part of me just studying the surroundings of the game. And so I think I've always been pretty clear, and I think that's always the kind of thing that has helped me at like halftime of a match, where I can really decide what's the most important thing and figure out what we're going to do in the second half. And believe me, it doesn't always work. It's not always the right solution, but I think the tactics of the game, and that's also to my detriment, because I think I remember I was at LIU. I was there for 3 years and started the program there. But in the second year, I remember a girl named Lauren Grant came up to me once, because I'm so engrossed with the tactics that I was barely working on the technical with the team. She goes, "Can we please do some technical exercises? I feel like I'm losing it." And I said, "Wow, all right, yeah." So you learn from the players as well, right?
Yeah, that's great. The skill part is something I wanted to ask you about. Um, so so now you've got this experience, this broad experience, and you've seen so much, and you're so close to the men's professional game, and you get to see some of the top players from Europe that have come over here. How important do you think the technical development is in the big picture? Like how much percent do you reckon should a coach be working on in the technical development? Let's just talk about under 15 and below. How much percentage do you think should be on the technical piece?
Well, I think you even have to go younger than that. I mean, maybe by the time you're 15, the percentage of it is lessening then. But to me, it's like that 12 and under area, James. And I think we've probably talked about this and you asked me, at the top, what turned me on about the sport, what was passion, and I wanted to win. So winning is very important to me in a competitive environment. But I've never understood the desire and need to have that trophy or a victory at those younger ages, where we should be encouraging athlete. Here's an example, and I don't know if I'm clearly answering this, but I always just despise listening to parents on the sideline of an 8-year-old game talk about a kid who is hogging the ball, dribbling from one end to the other, beating 7 players off the dribble, and calling him a hog or her a hog. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, man, we need these are the players we don't have in our country. Why are we? And this is what happens across our land. This is what happens. Kids get discouraged from expressing themselves. And you're expressing yourselves based on your technical ability oftentimes, and then your courage. So I think that's something I've learned as a coach, because I'm telling you, I was that way early on. It was like, even with the maybe dribbling out of the back rather than just doing everything in 1 and 2 touches. Sometimes that skill to be able to spin out of pressure out of the back. For years I was like 1 or 2 touch out of the back, boom. If you can't do that, then send it into the corner and we'll refresh. But I now, as a coach, give the fullbacks, even the center backs at times, but I'm not quite there yet with them. But give the fullbacks a chance to individually break pressure, solve pressure when it's the right time. So the technical aspect of the game is massive. It's vital, and you talk about a couple of New Jersey players, Tobin Heath and Carli Lloyd. One of the things I always respected about those guys is they would come to either college practice or club practice after watching the men play on the weekend in Europe, EPL, whatever it was, and they would see somebody do a move, and they would spend that training session trying to do the move and making it work. That's what we need more of, man.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, so you mentioned a little bit parents, and that was a subject that I wanted to talk to you about. Having been involved in 3 different college programs, I'm sure you saw a lot of parents that were kind of backseat drivers, that kind of too obsessive, too involved. Um, did that ever stop you from recruiting players because you knew that the parent would have been too much to handle on the sideline?
There were a couple of instances, but for the most part, to me, it was about the kid and how much of a feel you could get for the kid. And I will tell you, and this is again experience, James. If we're going to talk about parents and we're going to talk about managing parents, and you've seen this. This is starting to develop. I mean, there's a lot more. There's a lot of discussion about coach parental player relationships and how they should work. And what I've done, I'm going to say for the last 8 years, I can't remember exactly when I started it. I did start it at Rutgers too, is to have preemptive meetings with the parents and the players so everybody hears the message. And the thing is, as you have years of experience, you know what's going to happen. You know there are going to be some consequential things that happen along the way. And the thing I learned to do, and it works brilliantly with my club team. I don't have any problems with parents on my club team. And you know, we have some that are a little more overzealous than others, but it's because I'm upfront with them. I know what's going to happen. Your daughter's not going to play. You're going to feel this way. How are we going to handle it? And we set the table on how we're going to deal with all the different situations that you know are going to happen. You know, the 4 players that come in a carpool at the start of the formation of a team are going to sit over there and just stay by themselves. You know, so you tell the parents and the team, I'm making that split right the moment I see it, and we all have to be on board with that, and the parents too. You know, parents have to welcome in the new parents, whatever it might be. So I just think, you know, honesty and communication. And I was definitely the coach that said, I don't want any parent interaction, none. Because, you know, those tailgates at Rutgers or any other place I've been, and a kid hasn't played, and whether you win or not, we beat Santa Clara 1-0 on a Dominique Esposito goal. Carly was there as well. And I got accosted by a parent after the game because the kid who was a starter was removed from the game early. She was not effective. The person that went in was more impactful, you know, and as a coach, I managed the game. And we beat the number 4 team in the country. So, and this is the life of a coach. You have to deal with these things. There's always, and that happens, right? There's always someone who didn't play, and you always feel bad, especially if they come to practice every day and they work at it. But if you have preemptive meetings with your parents and your players, set up as many scenarios as you can of things that you know are going to happen. And then if they fail to adhere to what you agreed to, you go, hey, do you remember when we talked about this situation? And you almost always you get a positive response. And, you know, occasionally you're going to get somebody that's never going to be agreeable. And, you know, that's that.
I love what you said, because that's actually exactly the same approach that I take in the start of the season. I actually get everybody in the same room, big presentation, go over all the scenarios, get on the same page. And I found that in general, when you present it up front, people know what they're getting themselves into. They know the rules, and it's much easier. Do you use the same approach for when you're instilling your philosophy on your players? Do you do the same thing, have a meeting before the season starts and go over all the rules, the expectations, the playing philosophy? You do the same thing, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to get too in depth, I don't think, especially with the players. You know, they understand that we want to play. I mean, everybody's got their own way. And to me, it's like, well, you're going off to college. Some of you might maybe eventually play pro, whether it's here or overseas or whatever it might be. But I want you to be able to go, and when you're a freshman center back and the coach is talking about a zonal back 4, you're going to know exactly how to instruct the people in front of you, to the right of you, and to the left of you, because you've been in a program that's helped you with that. So I think that's the biggest thing. The parent side, you're going to like this, James. I want you to add this to your repertoire, okay? Maybe you already do it. Early in the year, it's usually, I usually do it on our first road trip. Like, you know how in the fall, I coach high school age kids, you know, generally sophomores, juniors, some seniors. And so we go to one of these early showcase things like Castle or whatever in November. So what I'll do is I'll have a special parents meeting with those, and they don't make them anymore. And I'm so upset. Quickle's got those things that you slap up on the wall, you know, and you can write on them and stuff. Have you ever seen those?
Yeah.
They don't make them anymore. They don't make them anymore.
Okay.
I've got like one more box left. I'm really preserving it.
Like a whiteboard.
Yeah, it's like a whiteboard that you can just slap up on the wall.
Yeah.
And so I'll have a parent meeting, and I will go over the philosophy, but also the tactics. I show them the systems of play that we're going to use and why, and kind of talk. And this all happened once when I had a player meeting on the road, and the parents came in because they brought food or something at the end of the meeting, and one of the mothers went up to one of them. She goes, what's this here? And, you know, I started talking. She goes, would you do this for the parents? Just let us hear all this. And I thought, why not? And you know what? It actually, I can't tell the reaction I get. Like the next morning at breakfast, it's like they're all like, man, that was so cool, you know. And some will come back and ask more questions, and some of them just admit, you know, I don't know a lot of what you said, but they're really appreciative that you're kind of bringing them on board. And maybe it'll limit some of the sideline chatter along the way too. Who knows? It could.
Yeah, no doubt. And I don't want to act like I'm duplicating, but I do the same thing. I go over the systems, the formations, the whole lot. The more information that, you know, you can give the parents, they feel a part of it. And I agree. And I hope that, you know, when this video gets out, you know, this inspires other coaches to understand. And the thing that I learned the most important thing that I learned when I started coaching was I was reading a book, and it said, you can't get rid of the parents. That's not happening. So you got to learn to live with them. So you got to learn to manage them, educate them, bring them on board. So you can't just say all of you are going to sit in the car. Find a way to bring them on board and see what you're doing, see that you're a good person, and make them see that you really care about the team and you're doing your best. So that's great. Tell me a little bit about, so you're, like I said, you've gone now top to bottom. Do you feel that the kids that are coming through the system now that are entering college level soccer, are they as good as the players that were around 20 years ago? And if not, they might be different. How are they different, or are they better? Like, what's your take? Do you think they were better back in the day?
I don't want to say they were better back in the day, but I don't think there's been a massive, you know, there's a massive difference in ability level. I think, James, there's more players, whether it's girls or boys, that understand how to play the game, you know, a certain way. I think there's been an infiltration of coaches who I think teach the game in a way where there's a lot of emphasis on possession and control, and when's the right time to you know, to be direct and things like that. And I think even though it's not close to as much as I would like, I think kids are watching the game more because there's so much more on television. The FIFA video game, which I've never played, I suppose I might not ever, but I see my own kids, you know, especially my son, you know, with an understanding of what's going on in Europe because he plays FIFA. So, and that passion, I think, plays into, you know, understanding the game a little bit better. So, and the other aspect, James, I would say, and you talked about, I started the Sirius XM show in 2016, and I have learned a lot. And one of the things I've spent a lot of time on recently because of the pandemic is the mental performance side, the psychological side. And I think that part of it, I think the emphasis on that and the emphasis on being teachers rather than coaches, that's something over the last 10 years and especially the last 5 years that is really at the forefront of coaching education, I think. So I do think our children are getting more positive coaching than they ever have. But that's not answering your question. I don't see the level of you're going to tell me that you go back to that 1991 U.S. women's national team that was in China, won the first ever women's world championship. Christine Lilly, Brandy Chastain, Mia Hamm, Michelle Akers, Karen Gabara, Mary Harvey in goal. You know, I mean, some of the best players that have ever come out of our country performed in 1991 at the highest level. So, you know, I have trouble comparing, but kids, I think, are getting exposed to different things in the game, which are helpful more so now than in the past.
Do you think that back in the day, they were just different because there was more street ball and they played on the street more than what kids play these days? I agree that they're a lot more wise now tactically. I think they're probably a lot more disciplined and a lot more intelligent players now, but are they technically as crafty as our players were back in the day?
Well, I've had so much discussion about that. I know you've heard that on the show from time to time. I recently, I have a YouTube channel now, James, Glenn Crooks Soccer. So go see some of those interviews. But one of them is with the Soccer Town USA boys. Tom McCabe, who produced it, he's from South Orange, but then Tony Miola and John Harkes. And we spent a lot of time, as that documentary, Soccer Town USA does, Kearney, New Jersey, on, and a guy I've worked with for many, many years, Michael O'Neill, was right there in the midst of that too. They went to the courts before school, at lunchtime, and after school. The courts was this little area. You could play about 5 aside. And I asked John Harkes, I said, what's the most, if no one sees this documentary, or if you're inspiring them to watch, or what was the most important part of your growing up there and becoming the player you were? And he said, winner, it's 3 words, winner stays on. And it was from those days of playing pickup. There's 50 or 60 guys there, all different ages. And if you lost, you were getting on that court again for another 45 minutes. So he said people were killing each other. And Tony Miola said at 10 years old, playing with 18, 19, and 20-year-olds and adults, that's where he learned competition. And so is it being able to do the tricks and the technical from street ball, or is it the actual, wow, you also got this situation where winner stays on?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I like to play a lot of winner stays on in training. You really get an idea who's competing. And
yeah, that's
if your training session's ever kind of a little lull or whatever, boom, you add that, and you add the, like Tommy Durkin taught me a million years ago, once the ball goes out of bounds, whoever chases it and gets it first, it's their ball, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So you've been watching the New York City FC. You've been watching them now for a number of years. You're obviously at every single game. You're watching players from all over the world that are coming into the MLS. How big is the difference in the players that are coming from overseas? People like David Villa and Patrick Vieira and Lampard and Pirlo. How different are they to our players here?
They're comfortable on the ball. Pirlo, for whatever anybody wants to say about Pirlo, and he was criticized pretty thoroughly because, he just, the way he goes about it is not very American. He's not going to get in for the battle. I mean, the one time he was in a wall on a free kick and he bailed out of the wall and a goal was scored. And you Google that one. That one gets replayed over and over. But what my focus with watching Pirlo is his awareness in the midfield, how comfortable he was on the ball, and he never gave it away. I mean, no one can get the ball off that guy. Lampard the same. Villa was a different animal. They were all different. You got an attacking midfield, you got a guy that's more of a distributor out of the midfield, and then you got Villa, the vehement striker up top, the vicious striker. And they were a cut above. Villa for his ability to finish at any angle with either foot and also in the air. So he was just, I've never seen anybody finish like that, and got to see him train quite a bit too. So it was just that part of it was remarkable for me. And Lampard, it was, I think, his thing was coming out of the midfield. And being at the games, James, you can see everything. You can see the game develop more than when you're watching it on TV. And Lampard's movement off the ball, you got the idea why he's Chelsea's all-time leading goal scorer as a midfielder, because of his timing out of the midfield and getting into the area. I mean, he scored some unbelievable goals that were not defended at all, and did so at Chelsea and as well, because he's making these delayed runs, or he takes a false step and then goes this way. And there was sophistication there, with all those players. And I think that's sometimes people call it the retirement league, not anymore really, but I think seeing those guys come in and watching them train, and they all trained very hard. Villa was always the hardest working player in training. I think that's a great example for the young American players. I said that in the women's game as well, with the startup of the professional leagues as they develop. Bring in the international players to show, they've got that sophistication because it's been in their blood from the time that they, were awake, and it just hasn't been for us. So there's those little things like that we can take away. But I think the Europeans, South Americans, can take away some of that grit and grind and American spirit. I think they should be taking stuff from us too, but yeah. So, yeah, I've been there from the start. I was there for the very first game in Orlando, 60,000 people in the Citrus Bowl, where 2 expansion sides were going at it. David Villa playing for New York City FC, Kaká for Orlando City. Kaká scored the game-tying goal on a free kick late in the game. It was 1-1. Wow. It was really quite a moment.
Wow, that's great. So, as we've mentioned a few times here about your show, what are some of the key things? Just give me like 3 key things that you've learned that really stick out for you on all these interviews that you've done.
Wow. Yeah, the first thing to me is words, and using words, and I think this is one of the more important ones, using words in training that when you get to game day, where the players players, 95% of what you say on the sideline, they can't hear or can't process because they're in the middle of playing. And I don't think we should be shouting all the time anyway. But if you can come up with language that you use in training that at a moment in a game can help, and I'll give you an example. I use the words "fix your shape," which I got from a colleague of mine, TJ Kostecki, when he has done vision training, which I'm a huge proponent of. And what it is if once the players are a little bit, too tight or not aligned, whatever it might be, you just stop, fix your shape, and then you go and watch them fix their shape. And what they learn is that if you shout that during the game, they'll look around, and the next thing you know, you'll see the midfielders getting better spacing off of each other, whatever it is. And it's just me screaming, fix your shape, completely understand what's going on. And that's all been developed by using the same language in training. I think that's one of the most important things I learned. And it's not just words that can translate on game day to get some sort of reaction. It's just the words you use don't say my bad, say I got it next time, just always being conscious. And actually, one of my guests I remember said, you should sit down, and when you know what your exercises are going to be, you need to go over some of the vocabulary you're going to use in the event it doesn't work out the way you want it to. So it's not coming across as like, hey, you stupid players, you don't get this. It's more like, just the words are so vital. And I think that's the biggest. Maybe I haven't given you 3, but one that sticks out more than anything is words and how impactful they are. Certainly your body language is too, the nonverbal, how your eye contact, all those different things. And I think I've really become a more thoughtful coach, and I think a better coach in my time since Rutgers, because of all this time I've spent just talking to so many colleagues. I mean, it's really been brilliant.
Yeah, man, you're a lucky person. And, you know, I've always thought that you're just gaining this unbelievable knowledge, and you can tell that you definitely have. And there's no way in the world that you haven't transformed your thinking in the last 4 or 5 years. So final piece, man, your best soccer memory?
Wow. Best soccer memory. Well, I'll tell you, as a player, I'll give you as a player and as a coach. How's that? Because there was not much going on in a player. But I told you we won that championship at the Dawn to Dusk festival in Lake Placid. And there were good teams, man. There were professional players, and I'm on this team, and I'm at the bottom, and it's up there at elevation. So, you play for 5 minutes, your lungs are burning. I mean, but I was there at the end of the game. They couldn't, I'm sure they wanted to get me off, but I'm on there, and the keeper came off the line, and I rotated back to the line, and I blocked a shot in the waning moments of that game. And my teammates came over, and they understood what happened. It was like, I was the hero because I saved this off the line when I had contributed very little, I think, during the course of that championship match. So believe it or not, that's my favorite playing moment. And coaching moment or broadcasting moment, I'm gonna go with this. As far as being like just wowed and somewhat emotional, and maybe I should break it down like that, James. My broadcast moment and my coaching moment. All right, my broadcast moment is July 25th, 2016. Andrea Pirlo making his initial entrance at Yankee Stadium in a game that New York City won 5-3. I think he ended up with 2 assists that game. And just being able to see a legendary figure like this. I know Villa was there, but Pirlo, Pirlo, he's got that, he's smoking a cigarette and drinking a glass of wine while he's playing. He's just got that aura about him. And he's a rock star. When we were on the road, everywhere we went, I think the date was 2015, not 16, but everywhere we went on the road, it was all about Pirlo. I mean, the guy is a rock star, but that was a great, great moment. And then as a coach, it was North Carolina, 2001, Carli Lloyd's freshman year. We were in the Sweet 16, beat Princeton to get to the Sweet 16, which was a great, great moment. But an even better moment, I think, for at least the time being, we led North Carolina, the #1 team in the country, 24-0 coming in. As my family and friends that came to the game later said, people were in the stands like, who's this Rutgers? They had no idea what Rutgers was or who we were. And Megan Cameron, another freshman, scored, and we were up 1-0. We were the better team by a pretty significant margin. So we went into halftime feeling pretty good. But the depth of the team, and you know how North Carolina plays it. Every 20 minutes, man, it's a fresh 11 or fresh 10, 2 goalkeepers play. And Adrienne DeGanzik hit a shot that deflected off a defender, and the North Carolina keeper, and I just can't remember her name, but she went on and played professionally. She was wrong-footed and still made the save. It was unbelievable. That would have made it 2-0. They went down and equalized 1-1. 8 minutes left in the game. They score another. It's 2-1. We lose to Anson Dorrance. And to be honest with you, Anson saw Carli, and he said after the game, she's a good player. I said, yeah, well, if you can do anything, appreciate it. So, but that was quite a moment. That was quite awesome.
Favorite team? European.
I'm just such a on my show, I used to have what I called Pepisms. So every week I would read either a quote from Pep or a quote from somebody else about Pep or something about Pep, because I just think he, among all the coaches that I've studied and read, and I'm just a huge, huge Pep fan. And that Barcelona team and that Spanish team in 2010 that won the World Cup, I think that was a moment that really changed the course of soccer in the world, and I know it influenced a lot of people here in the States, including myself. And, you know, the fact that he's got a package of 10 ways to bill out of the back, depending on the pressure and things like that. I love the philosophy. I love how he operates with his team, because it's not just the X's and O's with him. It's his relationship with his players as well. I mean, those two books, which Pep Confidential, and I can't remember the other one is, where Marty Parental, who I'd love to interview, but he doesn't speak much English, so he said he just can't do it. But he spent those time. When Pep was at Bayern Munich and when Pep was at Man City, I think, you know, just spent time and got all the insight. And so, long-winded answer to your question, but I would say that Barcelona team, and I remain a Barcelona supporter, but what's happened in their academy is really disappointing, and that could be another show.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I feel exactly the same way. Favorite male player?
Man, I love Patrick Vieira.
Okay.
And I got to know him when he coached New York City FC, but I was a huge fan before that. I remember sitting with my son and watching Arsenal play, and this guy going box to box and, you know, just so I really admired him, and he was fiery. You know, he still, I think, has the record for red cards in the EPL. So not that I'm condoning, you know, getting booted from the game.
Yeah.
He also got a couple of while he was coach for New York City FC. But there was something about that guy, and that was just remarkable. And then I go all the way back to my first favorite player was Beckenbauer back in the Cosmos days, because I used to go to those games at Giant Stadium. And what that guy did on concrete, because that's what the artificial surface was at Giant Stadium back then. It was, you know, it was AstroTurf. It was a thin layer of turf like that and concrete underneath. There were no like layers of drainage and all this other stuff, man. And his ability to just control the game was remarkable. So I'm going with those two.
Okay.
I like so many others, but geez, that's who I'm going with.
Can I ask you your favorite female player?
Oh, geez, now you really. So what? How am I gonna? Carli Lloyd. How's that?
All right.
Thanks for the setup.
No, it wasn't a setup, man. It's I just part of.
Well, that's pretty. That's but yeah, what she's accomplished and what she's still doing at what is an advanced age for an athlete. Let's face it, is pretty remarkable. And I know you've you know, you're a big part of that, and it's just it's been really fun to watch. And you know, it'll be interesting to see what happens out at this Utah tournament, that's for sure. But
yeah, definitely.
It's I think for the women's game, I think it's going to be a bit of a boost, because they're going to be the only thing going.
Yeah.
When they start, you know, so I think there's there's something that could work there. But yeah, so that's those are my favorites.
All right. So
now you're going to ask me who's my favorite interviewer. I'm not answering that one.
Yeah. So well, listen, man. So you know, yeah, I was able to guide Carli along and so on, but you definitely played a big part. I've always tried to make sure Carli doesn't forget that. I think the 4 years with you believed in her. You gave her the freedom to play. You gave her the freedom to express herself. She was a go-to person. She felt great about herself. And I think if she went anywhere else, she probably wouldn't have felt that and wouldn't be the person that she is today. So you definitely played a part in that as well. And there's no doubt about that. So I just want to say thank you for that too. But what I discovered here today, you're really an inspirational story, because like I said, you didn't start as this soccer junkie that fell in love with the game and sort of fell into it and had all these amazing coaches that were able to guide you and help you. You didn't have real life games from 10 years old all the way through to 35 years old as a tool to help you out. you fell into the game, and you're obviously a person who loves to learn, and you're addicted to that. You can tell because you're still learning, and just what you've done.
I do have a thank you. I do have a favorite quote which relates to that.
Tell me.
It's what you learn after you know it all that counts.
I like that.
And that comes from John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach, the late John Wooden, who you talk about winning, but you talk about winning the right way. And but he was that's my favorite quote. I've placed that in front of a player or two along the way, that think they know it all.
Yeah.
That's
great. But yeah, man, it's a fantastic story, and I really do hope that a lot of these parent coaches that listen to this, they feel inspired that you don't have to have this big, massive soccer background to be a great coach. You just got to be open to learning. And people like Jose Mourinho, Rafa Benitez, Arsene Wenger, those guys didn't play at the highest level, but look at them. They're some of the best coaches in the world. So I don't believe in you have to be a great player. In fact, I think that if you're not that good, you kind of create solutions in your head to kind of keep up, rather than if you're this athletic person that kind of blows by people and doesn't have to think. I think the weaker players think more and actually end up becoming better coaches. So it all makes sense, mate.
Man.
Well, thank you, okay? On behalf of everybody in New Jersey Youth Soccer, thank you so much. Awesome stuff, bloke. Much respect to you.
Thank you, James. Appreciate it. Hopefully see you soon.
Yep.